The fact is, this was President Obama knew everything. Vice President Biden, as dumb as he may be, he knew everything. And everybody else knew everything, Maria, and you know it. And Comey and Brennan and Clapper, they all were terrible, and they lied to Congress. And they want to put Flynn in jail, and he didn't lie because the FBI said he didn't lie, and we just found that out. You know, it was only Mueller that said he lied, and they said he didn't lie.
President Trump this morning talking to our own Maria Bartiromo, slamming former President Obama, some of his top officials as well, over the Trump-Russia probe and the investigation of his former national security advisor, Michael Flynn. The now discredited Trump-Russia investigation ultimately led to the prosecution of Flynn, and Flynn is now in legal limbo after the Department of Justice decision to dismiss the case, only to have the judge, Emmett Sullivan, challenge the dismissal. Let's talk about it with former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker. Matthew, great to see you. Thanks so much. You know, it's axiomatic in the law that you can't prosecute someone for lying to the FBI when the only two witnesses, the two FBI agents who interviewed Flynn, say he didn't lie. And yet all of that was concealed by James Comey, his successor, Christopher Wray, and Bob Mueller's team of partisan prosecutors. Does this represent one of the most egregious cases of miscarriage of justice?
Yeah, Greg, I'm glad to be with you tonight. And I would say that this General Flynn case is really how not to conduct a prosecution. Not only was the investigation severely flawed and the predication was unsubstantiated, and everyone knows that, but now we have a federal district court judge that thinks somehow he's going to stand in the shoes of the Department of Justice, which has decided to dismiss the case, and proceed with the continued prosecution of Judge Flynn. I think it's a complete abject disgrace. I think what the judge is doing, should be subject to some form of either removal from the case or other disciplinary action, because this is just not how the court is supposed to conduct its business and not how the rules work, as you know, Greg.
Yeah, Judge Sullivan is now dispensed with any pretense of fairness and frankly ought to be kicked off the case. I want to ask you about Attorney General Barr. In several interviews, he's made it abundantly clear that the Trump-Russia collusion investigation should never have been launched in the summer of 2016. There was not a shred of credible evidence. There was a phony dossier that the FBI debunked the very month that Trump was sworn in, and yet that, too, was concealed from Congress, from the public, from the FISA court. Does that kind of government corruption, especially from that guy on your screen, James Comey, does that merit criminal charges?
I do know that John Durham is shortly going to lead the revelation of those charges, if possible. And I know Bill Barr and John Durham will bring a case if a case can be brought. It appears I know from your perspective, you wrote a great book, and my perspective as well, having been at the Department of Justice, that it appears that not only did people break the rules, but they committed criminal acts. So I fully expect that individuals will be prosecuted. We've been told by General Barr that there are targets of a criminal investigation right now. So I would expect some developments shortly.
All right. A few days ago, as you well know, Senator Lindsey Graham released a newly declassified document. It proves that people at the FBI who debriefed the Senate Intelligence Committee deceived them deliberately. They said that the dossier was credible, that Christopher Steele, the author, was reliable, and that the subsource had verified the information when, in fact, the opposite was true. Should the people who lied to the senators be held criminally accountable?
I think it's very interesting that all along the way, whether it's Sally Yates or Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein or others that were at the top of this pyramid, have pointed to the folks that were actually doing the work as the ones that made up a lot of these, kind of allegations of collusion with the Russian government and the Trump campaign. And ultimately, we need to get to the people that continued this fable. And I think these briefers may be some of those in the sights of John Durham and others, because you cannot go to Congress, obviously, especially a committee like in the Senate, like they did, and not tell the truth and be absolutely candid about what you do have and what you don't have. And as you know, I mean, Steele was not credible. There was no verification, and in fact, many of the facts were unverifiable. And the subsource, as we know, said it was completely, essentially parlor talk and make-believe.
Isn't it interesting that the mainstream media that drove the narrative of Trump-Russia collusion have now been conspicuously silent about this latest information that the FBI lied to the Senate Intelligence Committee about that?
Well, as you know, I was in that barrel for almost 18 months, and especially when I was acting Attorney General, and the breathless reporting and bombshell after bombshell that mainstream media was reporting, mostly of untrue rumors that they had heard from their friends inside the deep state. And I think now it is very interesting that they won't report the truth, which is what the Mueller investigation showed, which there was never any evidence of any relationship or collusion or any other criminal conspiracy between the Russian government and the Trump campaign.
Matthew Whitaker, always great to see you. Thanks for being with us.